You can't just leave me for her, Stephen. Isabella's voice echoed through the grand marble lobby. He smiled ruefully, holding the hand of his new bride, Donna. My heart pounded like a drum. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My fiancé of 3 years, Stephen Anderson, was standing in the middle of an exquisite wedding ceremony, but he wasn't waiting for me. He was with her, Donna. I took a step forward, my heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. Stephen, what is going on here? My voice trembled, a mix of anger and pain. Stephen looked at me, the corner of his mouth curling into a smug grin. Funny seeing you here, Isabella? Funny? You think this is funny? My voice rose, drawing the attention of the guests. You're marrying her, using the money we saved together for our future, for this. Donna looked at him, confusion shadowing her eyes. Stephen, is she telling the truth? Stephen sighed, pulling his hand away from her grip. Yes, Donna, it's true. Isabella and I were engaged, but she was never exciting enough. I felt like the ground had crumbled beneath me. Exciting enough? Is that why you stole from me? To fund this sham of a wedding? He shrugged, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Yes, Isabella, your savings made this dream possible. My blood boiled. You're a monster, Stephen. The crowd started murmuring, growing louder as people pieced together the betrayal. I could see the scandalous headlines already forming in their minds. Donna's shock turned into rage. You used her money for our wedding? How could you do that to me? Stephen turned to her, a forced calm in his voice. Donna, listen. No, Stephen, I interrupted. You're not talking your way out of this one. Both of you deserve to know the truth. He's been playing us, Donna. Donna's face crumpled, and she stepped back, her eyes never leaving Stephen. Is this all true? Have you been lying to me? He tried to take her hand again, but she slapped it away. Don't touch me. I looked around, meeting the eyes of everyone in the room. I will make you regret this, Stephen. With a final glance at the chaos behind me, I turned on my heel and walked out of the grand lobby. Each step away from Stephen and Donna solidified my resolve. I was done being the quiet, naive fiancé. The betrayal fueled something fierce within me. Layla, my best friend and lawyer, picked me up from the hotel. Are you all right, Isabella? Her concern was evident, but she knew my answer. I'm not okay, Layla, but I will be. We're going to make them pay. Her eyes sparkled with determination. What do you plan to do? I clasped my hands tightly in my lap, taking a deep breath. We need to gather evidence. We need everything on Stephen's betrayal, and then we take him down. Isabella, that's going to be hard? Are you sure about this? I nodded. More than ever. He didn't just betray my trust, he used me, my dreams, my savings. Layla's expression hardened. All right, let's get to work. We'll need everything he's done, every lie, every theft. I looked out the window, the city lights blending into a blur. He won't know what hit him. Layla nodded. We'll make sure of that. As we drove away from the scene of ultimate betrayal, I knew one thing for sure. Stephen had made the biggest mistake of his life, and I was going to make sure he paid for every single moment of pain he had caused me. The sun dipped below the horizon as Layla and I settled into a corner booth at our favorite cafe. She opened her laptop, ready to document everything. Start from the beginning, Isabella, she said. How did you meet Stephen? I took a sip of my coffee, gathering my thoughts. It was a business meeting. I was new at the firm, trying not to draw attention to myself. Stephen was the project lead, confident, charming. He made it all look effortless. Layla typed, nodding for me to continue. He saw me struggling with some papers and offered his help. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot at the time. We started talking. He was always so engaging. It felt like he drew me out of my shell. Layla glanced up. Was he always manipulative? I shook my head. Not obviously. He knew how to hide it well. There were signs, though, small things that felt off. I remember the first time he snapped at me. Her fingers paused over the keys. What happened? He had promised he'd be at my friend's birthday. He didn't show up. When I confronted him, he turned it around, said I was being clingy, that he had important work commitments. Layla's brows furrowed. Work commitments? Yes, but I found out later he was at a bar with some friends. I brushed it off at the time, thinking maybe I was overreacting. He was always so convincing. He sounds like a textbook manipulator. Charm when he needs it, cruelty when it benefits him. Exactly. There were good times, too. He made grand gestures, like that trip to the lake. He planned everything, made me feel special. Layla's frown deepened. But that was his trick, right? Lure you back in after pushing you away? Yes, I admitted, feeling a bitter taste in my mouth. Looking back, I see the pattern, but at the time I was blinded by love, or what I thought was love. And then the engagement. He proposed during a weekend getaway. He was so romantic. Candlelit dinner, fat rose petals. I thought it was genuine. Little did I know, he was planning our future with my money. Layla's eyes narrowed. When did you start putting money away with him? Right after we got engaged. He said he wanted to build a life together, and part of that was financial security. I trusted him, so I agreed. And he kept pushing the wedding plans, right? She asked, confirming what she already knew. Yes. Every time I asked about setting a date, he had an excuse. Work deadlines, family issues. I thought he wanted it to be perfect. Now I see he was stalling. While planning his wedding with Donna, Layla added, anger evident in her voice. Exactly. He played me for a fool. Layla leaned back, closing her laptop. We need evidence. Emails, messages, anything that shows his deceit. I nodded, resolute. I'll gather everything. He left traces. He got careless, thinking I wouldn't notice. We'll need to be thorough, Isabella. This has to be airtight. I know, I said, determination burning inside me. I won't let him get away with this. As we left the cafe, I made a silent vow. Stephen's charm had lured me in, but his lies had unleashed my fury. He would face the consequences of every deceitful act. Stephen's engagement party was the first time I felt completely out of place. His friends were loud, boisterous, like they owned the world. I nursed my drink, trying to find comfort in the corner of the room. Isn't Isabella too straight-laced for you, Stephen? One of his friends sneered, a tall man with an arrogant smirk. Stephen laughed, glancing over at me. She's perfect, he said, but his eyes flickered toward his phone, which buzzed incessantly all night. That was Stephen, always presenting one face to the world, another to those closest to him. I should have noticed the signs then. His constant need to check his phone, the smirk he couldn't quite hide when he thought I wasn't looking. But I wanted so badly to believe him. Later that night, as the party wound down, Stephen pulled me aside, his face serious. Isabella, I'm sorry about my friends. They can be jerks sometimes. I forced a smile. It's fine. I just wish you wouldn't get so distracted. He frowned, slipping his phone into his pocket. I promise, I'm here with you. Let's make tonight about us. But the promises always fizzled. He had a knack for saying what I needed to hear, only to revert to his old ways once my guard was down. Months passed, and our engagement became a cycle of highs and lows. Expensive dinners and spontaneous weekend getaways kept me hooked, overshadowing the doubts that crept in during his frequent business trips and late-night absences. One night, I confronted him as he was getting ready to leave. Why are you always out so late? Business, Isabella, he replied coldly, adjusting his tie. Don't be so paranoid. It's not paranoia when it's happening so often, I insisted, blocking his way. He sighed, annoyed. Look, I have big deals in the works. It can't be helped. You knew my job came with long hours, but you never explain anything. It's like there's this whole part of your life I'm not allowed to see. His expression hardened. I'm doing this for us, for our future. Do you understand that? I stepped back, feeling the familiar sting of his barbed words. I just want to feel like I'm part of your life too, Stephen. You are, but you have to trust me. He kissed my forehead, a gesture that used to comfort me but now felt condescending. Those kisses, those empty assurances, they were what kept me hoping, kept me trying. Until the night of our dream wedding shattered everything. After I saw him with Donna, the full weight of his deceit crushed me. All those moments of doubt now made sense. Stephen had used me, played me. The anger simmered beneath my skin, fueling my resolve. Sitting in Layla's office later that week, I handed over a stack of documents. These are emails, text messages, everything that felt off to me. Layla skimmed through them, her brow furrowing. This is good, Isabella, but we need more. Bank statements, any financial records showing the transfers. We need to create a clear trail. I'll get them, I said firmly. I won't stop until I have everything. Layla nodded, determination matching my own. We're going to take him down. Every step I took now had a purpose. Stephen had thought he could use me and walk away unscathed. He was dead wrong. I was going to expose every lie, every manipulation. He would regret underestimating me. The game was on, and I was ready to play. I watched as Stephen became increasingly distant. It started with him coming home late, always muttering something about a client meeting running over or a sudden work emergency. At first, I believed him, or at least wanted to. One evening I couldn't ignore it any longer. He came in at midnight, reeking of alcohol. I stood in the hallway, my arms crossed. "Where have you been, Stephen?" "Out with clients," he slurred, attempting to brush past me. "At a bar, I assume?" I shot back, not moving. "Isabella, don't start. I'm tired," he said coldly, heading for the bedroom. "Stephen, this is getting out of hand. You're hardly here anymore. We don't talk." "I don't see you. We talk," he snapped, turning to face me. "You just choose to focus on the negative." "Negative? You're never home, and when you are, you're in another world," I said, feeling my frustration bubble over. His face twisted in annoyance. "I'm working hard for our future. Why can't you see that?" "Stop hiding behind that excuse," I shouted. "Is there someone else, Stephen?" The room fell silent. For a moment I thought I saw something like guilt flash across his face, but it was gone before I could be sure. "That's ridiculous," he said, his voice icy. "I'm dedicated to us." I stared at him, feeling helpless. "Then act like it." Weeks went by and the nights grew colder, not just outside but between us. Stephen's absences became more frequent, his explanations more vague. One night, after he had left yet again claiming a business emergency, I sat on the couch with my laptop. I decided to dig deeper. It took some time, but eventually I stumbled upon his email account. As I read through his messages, a bitter taste filled my mouth. There they were. Dozens of emails between Stephen and Dee, discussing their secret project, their future together. It all clicked. Donna wasn't just some fling. She was a full-scale replacement. I printed everything, feeling my chest tighten with each page. When he came back later that night, I was ready. My hands trembled, but I squared my shoulders and waited. "Isabella, awake?" he called casually, nearly making me snap. "In the living room," I replied evenly. He sauntered in, then froze, noticing the papers spread out on the coffee table. "What's this?" "Your emails with Donna," I said, my voice steady despite my trembling fingers. "I know everything." His face transformed. Gone was the casual facade, replaced by a flicker of fear. "Isabella, I can explain." "Explain? You've been planning a life with another woman while stringing me along." I pointed at the emails. "Your late nights, your business meetings, they were all lies." He took a step toward me, but I held up my hand. "Don't. Just don't." His eyes darkened. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "Am I? Tell me, Stephen, what's your idea of proportion? Using my savings to fund your wedding with her?" He looked like he was about to argue, but then he laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You were always so gullible, Isabella. You didn't see it coming, did you?" My chest tightened. "No, I didn't. But I see it now and I'm done. You're going to pay for this, Stephen." Walking away from him, I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. He had shown his true colors, and there was no going back. With every step into our shared apartment, I knew I was moving towards uncovering every layer of his deceit. The end of our engagement would be just the beginning of his downfall. The tip came through an anonymous text message. "Luxury hotel, Saturday at noon. You need to see this." I stared at my phone, my curiosity piqued and my suspicions raging. I needed to find out what Stephen was hiding. On Saturday, I dressed carefully, trying to look composed, despite the turmoil inside me. The hotel lobby was grand, filled with fresh flowers and the murmur of guests. I saw the sign for the wedding reception and followed the arrows. My heart pounded harder with each step. Finally, I stepped into the ballroom. There at the altar was Stephen in a tuxedo, Donna by his side in a white gown. The world seemed to tilt. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, but his words drowned in the rushing sound in my ears. I forced my legs to move, walking purposefully down the aisle. "Stop." My voice cut through the ceremony, turning heads. Stephen's eyes widened as he saw me, a flash of panic crossing his face. Donna looked confused, glancing between me and Stephen. "What is this?" I demanded. "How could you do this to me?" Stephen's face twisted into a sneer. "Isabella, you shouldn't be here." "But I am," I replied, my voice shaking with fury, "and I see now exactly what you are." "Stephen, what's going on?" Donna asked, her voice trembling. "Tell her, Stephen," I challenged. "Tell her how you used my savings for this sham of a wedding." Donna's face crumpled, shock giving way to understanding. "Is that true? Did you use her money for this?" Stephen rolled his eyes, his mask slipping to reveal the callous man beneath. Yes, it's true. I used her money because she was never exciting enough. The guests gasped, whispers sweeping through the room. I took a deep breath, my rage fierce and burning. You think you can just walk away from this? Stephen smirked. I can and I will. What are you going to do about it? You'll see, I said, my voice cold. Everyone here will know what you did. Stephen turned to his stunned bride. Donna, don't listen to her. She's trying to sabotage us. But Donna's face had turned cold. Get away from me, Stephen. You lied to me. I stepped closer, my eyes never leaving Stephen's. You played both of us, but you won't get away with it. As security moved to escort me out, I turned to the crowd, raising my voice. This man is a liar and a thief. He used me, and he'll use anyone to get what he wants. I was led out of the hotel, but I didn't care. The seed was planted. Stephen's perfect world was crumbling around him. On my way out, I sent a quick text to Layla. I need everything we have on Stephen. Now. Back in Layla's office, we reviewed every piece of evidence again. We're taking this public, and we're going to make sure everyone knows, I said. Layla nodded, sliding a folder across the table. This is more than enough. He's not going to walk away clean. As we finalized our plans, I felt a sense of clarity and resolve. Stephen's betrayal had broken something inside me, but it had also forged something stronger. He thought he could dismiss me, but he was wrong. I would be the storm that tore down his carefully crafted facade, and I would make sure he felt every moment of it. Stephen had no idea I had been recording our conversation. When I confronted him at home, I made sure my phone was hidden but capturing everything. Your savings made this dream possible, he sneered, his words dripping with arrogance. This recording would be my weapon. Layla uploaded the file to her computer. This is perfect, Isabella. He's admitting everything. I sank into the chair, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. What now? Layla tapped away on her keyboard, bringing up her contacts. First, we alert the media, local news, social media influencers. We need to ensure maximum exposure. Then, we file a lawsuit. My eyes locked onto hers, my resolve steeling. Let's do it. The next day, I walked into Layla's office to find her already bustling with activity. I've got a reporter from the local news station interested, she said, looking up from her desk. And I contacted a few social media influencers who love a good scandal. Great, I replied, settling into the seat across from her desk. We need to make sure this hits him where it hurts. That evening, we posted the recording online, tagging Stephen's workplace and everyone relevant in his social circle. Within minutes, the post began to spread like wildfire. The following morning, Stephen burst into my office at work, his face red with anger. What the hell did you do, Isabella? I stood up, meeting his glare head-on. I exposed you. People deserve to know what kind of person you really are. You think you can ruin me? He spat, stepping closer. You'll regret this. I held my ground. No, Stephen, you'll regret this. You used me, you betrayed me, and now the world knows. As security escorted him out, Greg, a supportive coworker, approached me. You all right? I nodded, taking a deep breath. I will be. That night, Layla and I watched as the news station aired the story. Footage of Stephen's confession played, followed by my account of our relationship and his betrayal. It was surreal watching my life unfold on screen. He'll face consequences now, Layla said, squeezing my hand. This is just the beginning. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Stephen's face was plastered everywhere, his reputation slowly crumbling. He was suspended from his job pending an investigation, and Donna publicly filed for an annulment. One afternoon, I received a call from a reporter wanting to do an in-depth interview. Sitting down with them, I reiterated my story, making sure every detail of Stephen's deceit was highlighted. Do you feel justice has been served? The reporter asked. Not yet, I said firmly. There's more to do. I continued meeting with Layla, collecting more evidence and planning the legal side of things. We need to file a suit for emotional damages and theft, Layla explained. We can also go after him for fraud. I nodded, determined. Let's get everything we can. As we filed the lawsuit, the weight of my decision hit me. This fight wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. Stephen thought he could use and discard me, but he underestimated my resolve. Back at home, I received a call from my parents. You've always been strong, Isabella. We're proud of you, my dad said, his voice filled with warmth. Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done this without you and Mom. Remember, Mom chimed in, this is just a chapter in your life. You have many more to write. As I hung up, I felt a sense of closure. Stephen's actions had sparked a fire in me, one that wouldn't burn out anytime soon. This battle might be far from over, but I was ready to face whatever came next. My fight for justice was just beginning. The high-profile event was buzzing with energy. Every influential person in the city seemed to be there, and so was Stephen. I spotted him across the room, mingling and laughing, still playing the charming role he perfected over the years. Layla squeezed my arm. Ready? More than ever, I replied, clutching a small, portable speaker in my other hand. We moved to the center of the ballroom, taking deep breaths. I raised my voice, making it clear and forceful. Excuse me, everyone. May I have your attention? The room fell silent as people turned to look at us. Stephen's smile froze, his eyes narrowing as he recognized me. What is she doing here? Someone murmured. I have something to share, I continued, my voice unwavering. I lifted the speaker and hit play. Stephen's recorded confession echoed through the room. Your savings made this dream possible, his voice sneered. Gasps filled the air, followed by whispers and shocked glances. I watched as Stephen's face turned from pale to an angry red. Everyone, witness the man who used his fiancé's savings for another wedding, I announced, my voice cutting through the stunned silence. Stephen stormed towards me, eyes blazing. What do you think you're doing, Isabella? Showing everyone who you really are, I retorted, meeting his gaze without flinching. You think you can manipulate people, ruin lives, and walk away? Not anymore. Donna, who had been standing off to the side, approached us, her face ashen. Isabella, is this true? Did he really use your money? I nodded. Every word of it. He never intended to marry me. It was all a lie. The crowd started to murmur again, louder this time. Stephen tried to grab my arm, but Layla stepped in, blocking him. Don't you dare, she warned. You have no right to do this, Stephen shouted. I have every right, I snapped back. You deceived me. You took everything. Now everyone knows. Donna turned to Stephen, tears streaming down her face. I trusted you. How could you do this? Stephen's face twisted in anger and desperation. It wasn't like that, Donna. She's distorting the truth. Am I? I asked, holding up the phone, still playing his confession. You admitted it yourself. The room watched as Donna shook her head, stepping back from Stephen. I can't believe I was so blind. Stephen looked around, realizing the tide had turned against him. His composed facade shattered. You'll regret this, he hissed, his voice low and threatening. Enough with the threats, Stephen, I replied coldly. Your true colors are plain for everyone to see. A security guard approached, and at Layla's nod, he escorted Stephen out, who continued to rage and curse as he was led away. The crowd began to disperse, people still whispering and throwing curious looks my way. Layla turned to me, her eyes full of pride. You did it, Isabella. You exposed him. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. We did it. Over the next few weeks, the fallout was swift. Stephen lost his job and faced public disgrace. Donna went through with the annulment, and Layla pursued the legal action against him. The digital evidence we had collected, emails, bank transfers, and the recorded confession, painted a clear picture of his deceit. One evening, as I was sorting through some old photos, I received a text from Layla. We're winning. His attempts to countersue have been dismissed. I smiled, a real smile, for the first time in what felt like forever. Revenge had never been my goal. Justice was. And now, with each passing day, it felt like I was reclaiming my life, piece by piece. I met with my parents for dinner. As I walked in, my father wrapped me in a warm hug. You always had the strength, Isabella. We're proud of you. Thanks, Dad. I have a long way to go, but I'm getting there. We're here for you always, Mom added, her smile comforting. As we sat down to eat, I looked around at the faces of my family. For the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. This chapter of my life was closing, but a new one was beginning. And this time, I was the one writing it. The courtroom was tense as we waited for the verdict. Stephen sat a few rows away, his expression a mix of anger and defeat. My heart pounded, but I kept my composure, glancing at Layla for reassurance. The judge returned, and everyone rose. In the matter of Isabella Hart versus Stephen Anderson, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Isabella Hart. Mr. Anderson is hereby ordered to repay the stolen funds and compensate for emotional damages. A wave of relief washed over me as the judge continued, detailing the legal requirements Stephen would face. I glanced at him and saw his face turn ghostly pale. After the session, Stephen approached me in the hallway, his lawyer trailing behind. "Isabella, please, can we talk?" I shook my head. "There's nothing left to say, Stephen." He looked desperate. "I didn't mean for things to go this far. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix what you did," I replied, my voice steady. "You made your choices. Now you face the consequences." With that, I turned and walked away, feeling a weight lifting from my shoulders. Layla joined me, her eyes sparkling with triumph. "We did it, Isabella. Justice is served." "Thank you, Layla. I couldn't have done this without you." "Yes, you could have," she said with a smile, "but I'm glad I could help." The weeks following the trial brought a sense of closure. Stephen struggled to find work, his reputation in ruins. Donna quietly left town, seeking a fresh start away from the scandal. I spent more time with my parents, drawing strength from their unwavering support. One evening, over dinner, my dad looked at me with pride. "Isabella, you've come a long way. How are you feeling?" "I feel free," I admitted, smiling. "It's like a new chapter is beginning." "That's the spirit," Mom chimed in. "You've got the whole world ahead of you." Back at work, my colleagues treated me with newfound respect. Greg, who had always been a silent supporter, approached me one afternoon. "Hey, Isabella, I was wondering if you'd like to grab a coffee sometime. Just as friends, of course." A genuine smile spread across my face. "I'd like that, Greg. Thank you." As we sipped our coffees, Greg shared his own experiences of overcoming challenges, and I found comfort in knowing that I wasn't alone. "You're stronger than you think," he said, his eyes full of warmth. "Thank you, Greg. That means a lot." My days became brighter, filled with new possibilities and a renewed sense of purpose. I decided to focus on my career, setting new goals and aspirations. The lessons I had learned from Stephen's betrayal became a source of strength, reminding me of my resilience. One day, Layla called with exciting news. "Isabella, there's a job opening in my firm. It's a prestigious position, and I think you'd be perfect for it." "Really? That's amazing," I replied, feeling a surge of excitement. "I'll send over my application right away." "You've got this," she said with confidence. "I believe in you." As I clicked send on my application, I felt a sense of accomplishment. Stephen's betrayal had tested me, but it had also made me stronger. Now I was ready to embrace new opportunities and build a future on my terms. Standing by the window, I looked out at the city lights, feeling a sense of peace. The storm had passed, and a new dawn was breaking. With my past behind me and new horizons ahead, I knew that I was ready to face whatever came next. The journey had been tough, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to reclaim my life. The future was mine, and I was determined to make every moment count.
Our daughter has become completely spoiled due to my husband's indulgence. As I was fretting over this, I overheard my daughter and husband speaking ill of me. Angrily, I confronted them, and my husband James just laughed.
"You heard her, right? She says she hates you."
Then my daughter Angelica chimed in.
"Yeah, that's right. I hate you, Mommy. Go away, you mean witch."
"You shouldn't talk like that." Meanwhile, James just shrugged and said to her,
"There she goes again. Mom's always nagging, huh?"
"I can't stand having her as a mom. I wish it was just you and me, Daddy."
That was my breaking point. I wondered if there was any point in staying a family after being spoken to like that. I didn't care what happened anymore. I managed to smile and said, "All right then, the scary mom will disappear." Please stay tuned for the turbulent story that unfolds next. My name is Kate, a 35-year-old working mother, balancing child rearing and my career as a tax accountant, currently employed at a local firm. My husband James and I met 7 years ago at a so-called matching party. He was quite popular there, being tall, handsome, and having a decent job. I never thought I stood a chance. But to my surprise, he approached me at the end of the party.
You're a tax accountant, right, Kate? I've always thought if I got married, I'd want a reliable woman. Would you like to go out for dinner sometime?
I agreed, surprised but pleased. That's how my relationship with James began, leading to a proposal after a year. By then, he had become irreplaceable to me. We visited his parents' home far away, and they were kind and welcoming. Next, we went to my parents' house.
Wow, Kate, you snagged such a handsome guy. Go ahead and marry him.
My mother was a career woman, and my father was gentle and calm. With their blessing, we got married. After the wedding, we rented a place equidistant from our workplaces. However, James hardly did any housework after we got married. Even when I asked for help, he'd say,
"You can handle it, Kate,"
and wouldn't lift a finger. I was frustrated, but ended up doing all the housework while working full-time. Soon, I got pregnant. He was overjoyed.
Yes. Will it be a boy or a girl? I hope it's a girl. She'll definitely be cute because she's my daughter.
You're getting ahead of yourself, James. I'm going to need a lot of support with the baby coming.
Leave it to me.
But during my pregnancy, he never took over the housework. He did, however, like to show off, accompanying me to prenatal checkups and parenting classes, making a good impression on my parents. I was frustrated by his superficial charm. Eventually, our daughter Angelica was born. But he didn't help with childcare, as expected. To be exact, he does take care of her.
Oh, you're so cute. My sweet Angelica.
He only played with her when she was in a good mood. He left the essential tasks, like making milk or changing diapers, to me. On top of that, he would upload photos on social media to appear like he was actively involved in parenting. I was frustrated with him for only wanting to take the good parts of parenting. Time flew, and Angelica was already 5 years old. I had been extremely busy with work for the past 2 years, often leaving childcare to him. But that meant I woke up early to do all the housework and prepare dinner, storing it in the fridge. He would pick her up from daycare in the evening, feed her the dinner I prepared, and look after her until bedtime. However, he never did any housework during this time. Most nights, I got home just before 9 p.m., after she was already asleep. As she grew older, he became increasingly harsh towards me, and our relationship became more distant. He even started bad-mouthing me to Angelica. One night, I got home at 9 p.m. and found Angelica still awake, playing on her tablet. "You're still up? It's way past your bedtime." James, meanwhile, was lying on the sofa, absorbed in his phone, ignoring her. "James, didn't I ask you to put her to bed by 8:30?
The nag is back.
Looking at the dining table, I saw the dinner I had made for her. She had eaten only the chicken and bread, leaving all the vegetables untouched. "What's this? Angelica, you haven't eaten any vegetables." Angelica, still focused on her tablet, replied,
"But I don't like veggies."
I knelt down in front of her and said, "Listen, Angelica. To grow up healthy, you need to eat veggies without being picky. Let's make sure you eat them from now on."
"No."
James then interjected,
What's the big deal? Let her eat what she likes, right, Angelica?
Yeah, Daddy. I only want candy and meat.
James! That's not helping her.
Ugh, scary mom alert. Angelica, let's ignore her and go to bed with Daddy.
Yeah, I'll sleep with Daddy. I love Daddy.
With that, he carried her off to the bedroom. I started cleaning up and began the housework, my body tired. He always coddled her, but never touched the important aspects of discipline and education. Yet on social media, he posted things like,
Daddy's girl loves me and I love her too.
She was completely spoiled by him, showing me no respect. Whenever I tried to discipline her, she would sulk immediately. My job only got busier, and I had to leave her with him more often on weekends. He took her to game arcades and out for meals, further spoiling her. She became increasingly defiant, even towards me. I knew I had to do something about this. Then, an incident occurred. I returned home about an hour earlier than usual, and heard them talking in the living room.
Hey, Angelica, do you love me?
Yeah, I love you, Daddy. You're nice and let me play lots of games. You even buy me candy.
That's right. I love you, so I'm nice to you. What do you think of Mommy?
Ew, I don't like Mommy. She always gets angry and is a mean witch.
Ah, you remember the words I taught you. Mommy is mean to you because she doesn't like you. That's why she's mean to you.
I couldn't take it anymore and stormed into the room. James, what are you telling Angelica?
Oh, you were home.
James, surprised at first, then smirked.
You heard her, right? Angelica says she hates you.
Then Angelica joined in.
That's right. I hate you, Mommy. Go away, you mean witch.
Angelica, you can't talk like that to me. I said this angrily, and James just shrugged and told her.
Oh, there she goes again, nagging.
I can't stand having her as a mom. I wish it was just you and me, Daddy.
That's when I reached my limit. So, is there even a point in staying a family if it's come to this? I don't care anymore. I contained my anger and managed a smile. Understood. The scary mom will disappear. James's eyes widened, perhaps thinking I would beg to stay.
Hey, Kate.
Ignoring him, I started packing my bags. Then, Angelica, with a bright face, said,
Yay! The mean witch is leaving? That's great, Daddy. Now, you can live with Betty.
Excuse me?
Hey, Angelica.
He suddenly flustered, but I heard what she had said. Betty? What are you talking about?
It's nothing. Must be a misunderstanding.
What are you saying, Daddy? I love Betty. She buys me games and is super nice.
At that moment, I realized the whole truth. James, are you having an affair? And you even introduced her to Angelica. He, finally admitting it, said,
Yeah, that's right. She's younger and prettier than you.
Call this Betty here, right now.
Fine, but it'll just make you feel worse.
A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. A young, slim woman was standing there. So, you're James's mistress. What are you thinking even meeting my daughter? She snickered arrogantly.
Just as James said, a short-tempered old lady.
Excuse me? James then put his arm around Betty, with Angelica clinging to her leg.
Betty is a much better woman than you.
Don't bully her.
Feeling everything was ridiculous, I suppressed my anger and said, Fine. As I said, I'm leaving. But I will demand a fair settlement for your infidelity. I'll leave Angelica's custody to you. She seems to prefer you, anyway. He smugly said,
Betty can have kids, so she'll dote on Angelica. And don't worry about the settlement. Her family owns a company. She's the executive vice president, so they're wealthy.
That's right, ma'am. Thanks for handing over James and Angelica. But please make sure to pay child support. We won't allow visits, though.
They said this with an air of smugness. Ignoring the smirking pair, I crouched in front of Angelica. Are you really okay with this, Angelica? You won't see me anymore.
I told you I'm fine. Just go away, Mommy.
She said this while turning away. I stood up, grabbed my bags, and left the house. Then I went back to my parents' house. They were furious about what James had done. After they had vented their anger, my mother asked me,
But are you really okay with leaving Angelica?
It's fine. Just watch, Mom. Then I smiled slyly. A month after I left the house, James called me several times, but I ignored all his calls. I continued to ignore him for about a week. One day, after finishing work, I found him and Betty waiting for me. What do you want? I believe we have nothing to do with each other anymore.
I want to talk. Please, give me a little time.
Please, ma'am. I'm asking you to.
Reluctantly, we moved to a nearby cafe. Suddenly, James yelled at me desperately.
Kate, please, I'm begging you, cancel the alimony claim.
Why should I?
Well, there are complications.
Like your parents finding out about your affair and disowning you, and getting kicked out of the company?
Huh? How do you know about that?
They stare at me dumbfounded, and I told them. Because I was the one who told her parents about your deeds.
What?
Unbeknownst to them, I was the accountant for her parents' company. I knew her parents were strict and hated dishonesty. So I went to them and reported everything about James and Betty. They believed Betty's lie that I was dead and were furious. They disowned her and promised to kick her out of the company.
It's all your fault we're in this mess.
She was almost in tears as she lashed out at me. I retorted, Then maybe you shouldn't have done anything shameful. And don't forget you both owe me $20,000 in alimony. Seeing my stern response, James finally broke down.
But we can't afford that. I quit my job to be a stay-at-home dad.
That's not my problem. By the way, where's Angelica today?
We left her with a babysitter.
He looked away as he said this, and then she burst out.
What's up with her? She doesn't listen, gets in trouble at daycare, and talks back when scolded. How did you raise her?
Well, maybe ask the man right there. I pointed at James with my chin, and he looked uncomfortable.
This isn't the family life I envisioned. Please, just spare us the alimony.
Yeah, Kate. You can afford it, right? Please, I'm begging you.
That's when I finally snapped. Everything is your own doing, you jerks. I'll make sure to collect that alimony, even if it means going to court. Be prepared. Well, I wish you 3 happiness. I'm disappearing from your lives forever. Goodbye. With that, I left the cafe, leaving them in despair. Afterward, James and Betty got into a huge mess over the alimony and eventually broke up. James was disowned by his family and now works day and night to repay the debt he incurred for the alimony. Betty tried to return to her parents, but they refused to take her back. Now she's working in the nightlife industry, a far cry from her previous life as a lady. As for Angelica, James eventually came to me, admitting he couldn't raise her alone. In the end, I took her back. When she saw me again after a long time, she cried.
Mommy, I'm sorry. I missed your cooking.
I hugged her and took her back to my parents' house. At first, it was hard to break her spoiled habits, but my mother and I patiently worked with her, explaining why certain behaviors were wrong. I cut back on work to spend more time with my daughter. Gradually, she became more polite and started living a more disciplined life. Now, she's a complete mommy's girl and clings to me. I can't help but adore her. After all, she's my daughter. Moving forward, I plan to raise her without spoiling her too much, but still shower her with love and care.
A wife like you with low income who only does part-time job is not qualified to be my wife. But your sister Julia, on the other hand, is amazing and radiant, unlike you. After all, she also earns $5,000 a month. She's also really beautiful, has a great body, and is gorgeous. There is a world of difference between you and your sister, since you're a woman with no charm at all. So, because of these reasons, it's not my fault that I cheated on you, Natalie. And it's all your fault that I'm acting this way. And that is the reason why I'm marrying your sister, okay? So, go ahead and sign the divorce papers.
Fine, I don't really care. But once we're done, and there comes a time where you regret about this whole thing, it'll be too late by then. Okay?
Huh? Oh, don't you worry. I won't regret it at all.
I think that I had a normal and ordinary, but happy married life with my husband, Dylan. But then, I guess it can all fall apart so easily like this, huh? I looked at my husband as he left the room while mocking me, and thought to myself, oh, how pathetic. But I wasn't thinking about how pathetic I was. It was about how pathetic my husband was. Because my husband would be the one who would lose everything from now on. My name is Natalie. I am married to my husband, Dylan, whom I met through a friend, and we are living an ordinary life together as a couple. Although we were still young and got married to each other, we didn't have any kids, and we were able to devote ourselves to each other's hobbies, friends, and other things that we liked. I like to do crafts and making little dolls. And Dylan, on the other hand, loves going out for drinks with his friends. So, supposedly, he and his friends get together once a month to catch up with each other. One day, when Dylan came home from drinking with his friends, he looked a little dissatisfied, which was pretty unusual. While preparing water to sober him up, I called out to Dylan. "Oh, welcome home, honey." "What's wrong? Why are you frowning, honey?"
Oh, well, I heard that a friend of mine is moving into a new place. And you know that big tower apartment in the neighborhood, which finished construction recently? Well, he's moving into that apartment.
Oh, wow! That's amazing. We can't imagine what that kind of world is like, living in a place like that for us. But it must be really nice. Just like Dylan has said, the construction of the magnificent tower apartment that had been under construction in our neighborhood for several years had finally been completed. I was looking at the construction site wondering what kind of rich people would be living there, but I was surprised that anyone close to us would be living there.
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine, isn't it?
Saying this, Dylan took the glass of water I gave him and chugged it in one go.
My friend's wife is supposedly self-employed and makes a lot of money, which is why they're rich. But compared to that, I'm the only one making any money, so it is definitely not possible for us.
Oh, honey, please don't say it like that. I work at the part-time job too.
But that's no different from a part-time job that even students are doing. I'm sorry, but it doesn't count as a proper work.
As my husband let out a huge sigh, he said that and pushed the empty glass towards me.
But compared to that, Natalie, your sister Julia is amazing, isn't she? When we had dinner with Julia the other night, she was wearing really expensive branded clothes and she's such a beauty, attracting everyone around her. And plus, she also told me that her monthly income is $5,000. Isn't that about 10 times more than what you earn with your petty job?
Dylan said this with a laugh and disappeared into the bedroom as he walks dizzily since he was also drunk from the alcohol. I let out a small sigh as I watched him disappear. Dylan looks down on me on a regular basis, and I really hate it when he does that. Dylan works for a somewhat small local business, and from what I hear from Dylan, it's a very tough place to work because the pay doesn't increase that much. I understand that, but that doesn't mean that he should look down on me. And recently, Dylan has been praising about what my sister wears frequently. My elder sister, Julia, who is 3 years older than me, also lives nearby where we live. She's also the type of person who likes to go out for drinks, so I knew that she and Dylan often went out for drinks together. Julia has always been popular since we were young. Julia, who is always stylish and beautiful, is pampered and spoiled by everyone around her, and has a personality so different from mine that it is hard to believe that we are even sisters. Being with such a cheerful person like Julia, Dylan and her must get along really well. The two of them would frequently go out to pubs and bars to drink together. I never thought that Julia and I would be compared as sisters even after I got married to Dylan. And to think that my own husband was the one doing it. Today, too, I felt really uneasy about what Dylan had said while I went to sleep. The next day, Dylan, who had the day off, suddenly says something while we were eating breakfast together.
Hey, Natalie, why don't we move? To that big tower apartment.
You're talking about that big tower apartment again? That's an option only for the rich people, you know that, right? As my personal opinion, I think that for us, a small house is just perfect for each other. Plus, I don't think that we'd really feel at home if it's too big like that tower apartment.
Well, that may be true, but if we think about getting old, isn't it not a bad idea to live in a place with good security and moving into a place which is just really clean and nice?
But if we move into a tower apartment now, we won't be able to live the life that we're living right now before we get old. You know that, right? But hearing this, Dylan was still mumbling and complaining, as if he was still not convinced with what I was saying about the truth. I guess he must be very jealous of his friend's success. Dylan has a habit of showing off about who he is and what he has to others, and he wants to be envied by other people for having what he has. Of course, if we could, I would love to live in a nice place like that tower apartment. But even if Dylan and I doubled our income, we would still never be able to afford such a luxurious place.
Well, I knew it, that it would be difficult, because I have a wife who doesn't earn enough.
He says this and looks down on me as he ignores the fact that he himself earns low income. So, as usual, I ignore what Dylan says and drink my soup.
All right, yeah. I guess I'll have to work a little harder too.
Dylan muttered this to himself, his expression brightening a bit as he ate his breakfast. He must have thought of something or an idea, but it's not like you can move into that tower apartment right away. I thought so to myself and did not really ask him what he was thinking, but I was later confronted with a shocking fact. It must have been about a month after we had that breakfast together. On that day, Dylan did not let me know about his drinking session with his friends, which was unusual of him,
and he came back home in the morning. Hearing a taxi stop near our place, I rushed to the front door.
Hey, Dylan! When you'd get home late, you would always call me in advance, so why didn't you? What's wrong? You had me really worried. When I opened the front door as I said that, I saw not only Dylan, but Julia with him. Both Dylan and Julia looked really drunk, and the sun was coming up, as it was really early in the morning. They must have been drinking together, judging from the way that smell of alcohol drifted through the air just by facing both Julia and Dylan. But no matter how much they both liked to drink, this was the first time they had ever continued drinking until morning. While I was being stunned at the situation, both Dylan and Julia pushed me out of the way and stormed into the house.
Natalie, I need to talk to you. Come over here.
I did as I was told, and I sat around the table as the two sat down before me. Both Dylan and Julia was too drunk that I thought it'd be just a huge hassle to go against them.
Okay, I'm going to just be straightforward with you. I am divorcing you.
What? Is that a joke? I asked with a laugh, but then Julia opened her mouth as she laughed at me contemptuously. Oh, I'm sorry, Natalie. Actually, it's something I've been thinking about for a while now. It seems like you and Dylan seem to live in completely different worlds. Dylan is much more suited to a woman like me. Julia said this as she hugged Dylan's arm right in front of me. To this, Dylan looked really happy. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing from early in the morning. I let out a huge sigh as I was feeling ridiculous about what was happening in front of my eyes. What is the meaning of all this, Dylan?
What do you mean by what is the meaning of this? All you've been doing is you've only been making pocket money and acting all high and mighty while calling that your job is proper work when it isn't, since it's only just a part-time job, and I just couldn't take it anymore.
Oh, I heard everything from Dylan, Natalie. When Dylan said he wanted to live in the tower apartment, you told him that it was impossible. You can't trust what your husband is worthy for, which shows that you're not a fit wife for him. The two of them were laughing happily as they said such things to me in a really drunk manner.
Unlike you, your sister had respected what I suggested. She said to me that I'll be a man who looks good and suits very well in that tower apartment. Like that, she agrees with what I say, and she is a nice woman compared to you.
I was just saying what the reality is, you know? Both you and Julia are just too drunk to make any good decisions. Just praising or complimenting each other that easily won't make any difference, will it? You have always had a poor mindset, and you were always so frugal, so it's no wonder that people around you will be poor too. Do you even know how much Dylan really earns? Julia says that as she glares at me. He earns about $7,000 per month. I couldn't help but laugh at what she said. How could I not know about Dylan's salary? He doesn't even make that much kind of money at all. When I looked at Dylan, he awkwardly turned his eyes away from me. I guess he must have lied to Julia as they were getting excited while they were talking to each other and getting drunk together. So, his usual habit of trying to look good to other people had kicked in, huh?
Anyway, Julia earns a lot more money than you, Natalie, and she also agrees with me and stands up for me. It's no doubt that she's a much better wife than you, Natalie, so that's why I'm divorcing you.
Dylan then brought the divorce papers from his room. I don't know how long he had been preparing the divorce papers, but the only thing which was blank was where I had to sign. Hey, why don't you reconsider this whole thing one more time? It's not something you can decide on the spur of the moment just because you're drunk. And Dylan, you're not being logical about any of this. And Julia, do you really think that father and mother would forgive you for taking away my husband?
I couldn't care less about what father and mother would think about this. Because a wonderful man like Dylan wants me for who I am. So I don't need anything else. Hearing this, Dylan was also nodding right next to me. If anyone heard what they were both saying, it was clearly obvious that Dylan and Julia was both only after the money. Knowing that Dylan and Julia was in this situation, there would be no point in trying to persuade them any longer, no matter how much I tried. Besides, there was no way I would be able to persuade them when I've seen how they were like to each other. Dylan had always looked down on me, whether it was about earning money or just anything else in general, and having him requesting for divorce, I was actually beginning to feel a little better about the situation. Fine, we'll get a divorce, but it's too late to regret anything, okay? I signed the divorce papers as I said that, and the two of them rushed me to submit the papers to the city office immediately. They called a taxi for me and made me submit the divorce papers right away. After witnessing that I had submitted the divorce papers, both Julia and Dylan then officially got married a few weeks after that. The two were so well prepared for this. I also left the house, leaving Dylan and Julia, who seemed to be enjoying themselves in front of my eyes. And right after I left, they went to buy a room in that tower apartment on the same day. The total amount to buy a room in that tower apartment was about $2 million. When I first heard the amount, my mind went blank, and I really couldn't process that amount in my head. Julia and I would move out next week, so I'll give this house back to you. Looking back on it now, it's such a small, shabby house.
Dylan described mercilessly about the house like that, even though it was where we had lived together since we got married. Dylan wanted to make himself look superior by looking down on someone else, no matter what. I see. Well then, I wish you both all the best. And that was the last time Dylan and I had talked with each other. On the day Dylan had moved out, he left without even saying goodbye. And since then, few days passed. The house was a little bigger now that they both left, but it was just the right size for living alone. I was finally free, being able to spread my wings comfortably for the first time in a long time. Then suddenly, the doorbell rang loudly. When I saw through the peephole, I saw Dylan right outside, and he looked really pale.
What the hell is wrong with that woman? Everything she told is a lie.
Dylan began to sit down by the front porch. Oh, so you must have finally realized by now who Julia really is, huh? While Dylan was sitting on the front porch, I explained who Julia really was through the door. Well, to begin with, Julia doesn't really even earn $5,000 per month. Actually, she doesn't even work full-time, and like me, she made her living by having a part-time job. Nevertheless, the reason she was able to wear such expensive clothes or have expensive branded goods was because Julia's boyfriends were paying everything for her. I knew that there were several men who'd do that for Julia, but I knew that once Julia got married, all of them would stop doing that. And plus, Julia knew how to spend a lot on things and could not be frugal and save any money at all. In terms of the money she received by her past boyfriends, she probably had a monthly income of about $10,000, but by the end of the month, since she would spend everything, she would have zero savings, which is why she would invite Dylan out for drinks for him to pay for her, so that she wouldn't have to pay for her own food expenses. And above all, she was in a lot of debt. She was also devoted to gambling, and from that, she was in debt. But she did lots of gambling so that she could just spend lavishly on shopping. The amount in which she had to repay for her debt was about $5,000 per month. In other words, Julia's debt was a lot more than the rent of the house where Dylan and I had lived. In the end, Dylan abandoned me and chose to be with Julia, who was in a lot of debt and had a habit of spending the money away. So, of course, there was no way that Dylan could afford to live such a rich life which he dreamed and planned for himself when he got together with Julia.
That woman, she's lied about everything to me. She's just scamming me, isn't she?
Well, you were also lying and pretending that you were earning $7,000 a month to Julia, weren't you? So you shouldn't be even saying that. You both did that to yourselves. The fact that the two of them were both just trying to make each other look good by lying about the truth was completely ridiculous. Dylan was talking as if he was the victim, but he had no right to talk that way since what he did was the same thing.
Well, why didn't you tell me about this in the first place? You were my wife.
Well, I'm not nice enough to give you any advice after you looked down on me like that. Because like what you and Julia said to me, it seems like I'm not really qualified to be a wife, right? After Dylan had heard what I had to say, he understood everything and began crying miserably at the door.
I'm so sorry, Natalie. I was completely wrong. I beg you, please just start over with me. If I continue to stay with that woman, I'll be ruined too.
It's too late to regret it now. I will never, ever get back together with you. So, can you please leave now? If you make any scene here, all the neighbors will see what you're doing and it'll be a rumor in no time, okay? Since you want other people to know that you're a good person, that's the last thing you want to be seen as, right? Dylan seemed to have been at the door for a while, but before I knew it, he left the house. He hates more than anything to be seen crying by the people he knows or he has met before. I felt just a little sorry for him, thinking that he would be a lot more miserable in the future. It seems like Dylan stayed at the tower apartment for only a few days and immediately sold the room. But since a large amount of debt remains for the tower apartment, he will have to pay it off bit by bit from now on. Julia and Dylan currently rented a new room and is living in it, but it is a small apartment for two people to live in, and they seem to be constantly fighting every day. Everything is coming all to Dylan with the fact that his divorce from me was due to his affair, and that he also had to pay alimony to me because of what he has done. The remaining debt for the tower apartment, and the rent, and the alimony. Naturally, it is not something Dylan, who really has a low monthly salary, can afford to pay, which is why he also began doing part-time jobs and other different jobs on the side, so that he could pay off what he had to pay. As for Julia, who is living with Dylan, she must have seen how frugal they both have to be, but it seems like she bought tons of clothes at a local clothing store the other day. It seems that her spending habits are still very much alive and probably very difficult to get rid of it. By seeing Julia being like that, it is hard to imagine when she will be able to pay off her debts. It looks like Julia tried to run away to our parents' house a few times, but Father disowned her because I had already reported this outrageous incident to him. Even I can no longer see Julia as my own elder sister. Compared to Dylan and Julia, my life has become a little easier, all thanks to Dylan's alimony. Plus, the manager of my part-time job asked me if I wanted to become a full-time employee. My manager said that they had just lost one of their full-time employees and wondered if I would be interested. I agreed to the offer right away. Thanks to this, I was able to earn enough money to live a comfortable life, even though I lived alone. So like this, in the end, I probably now earn more money than Dylan. Well, I guess I'll just treat myself to a nice little dinner tonight. Thinking that, I would return to my favorite house while looking at the big tower apartment which is standing in the distance. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.
My husband divorced me for the reason of infertility. 10 years later, he was shocked to see my son.
When are you going to have a baby?
Who do you think is paying for your expensive treatment? You money-eating bitch. My husband threw the divorce papers at me. What's with that defiant look? I've been taking care of you until now, you worthless piece of shit. Why don't you thank me and get the hell out of here? You don't work and you can't procreate. Who would want to be with a defective old hack like you? At best, you crawl miserably through life. I had been a housewife for 10 years and was abandoned at the age of 40 due to infertility. How was I supposed to live from then on? What saved me from losing the will to live was my beloved child who came into my life after the divorce. My son, who was like an angel smiling at me, called me Mom, and changed my life for the better. I never imagined that this angel was going to send my ex-husband to hell. My name is Kylie. My husband Josh and I were married for 10 years, and I was a full-time housewife. Both of us love children and look forward to having our own, but it was taking a long time. In the beginning, we were relaxed about it, saying it's a blessing in disguise. When we were still childless after 5 years, we decided to undergo fertility treatment. Josh believed that it was something women undergo and that the inability to have children was a problem on the woman's side. He was definitely not cooperative. Furthermore, the treatment was expensive, and when he saw me frequently falling ill due to the side effects, he would say, "Who do you think is paying for this? I'm not paying a lot of money so that you can fall sick in bed." He always complained. After 5 years of treatment, he seemed to have lost patience. Despite the best efforts of both myself and my doctor, I was unable to conceive a child, and the cost of treatment just kept mounting. Frustrated by the situation, he finally asked for a divorce. I tried to talk to him and asked him to reconsider several times. He had probably already given up on me, so he refused to have a talk. At the age of 40, I was going to throw a divorce and become single again. I felt as if there was a gaping hole in my chest, but I worked hard to survive. When I was going through the treatment, I got a part-time job to help cover the expensive bills. Fortunately, I was able to continue working the same job, and they even gave me more hours after I explained the situation. In addition, my manager had been talking about promoting me to a full-time position for a while, so he submitted my application to the head office for me. My days passed quickly and frantically from then on. About a month after I left Josh, my life was drastically changed again. My best friend from high school was in a fatal car accident with her husband. We used to share our joys and sorrow together. Throughout the time I was having trouble conceiving until the divorce we filed, she was always by my side. At first, I could not believe that she was gone. It sounded surreal, but as soon as I saw her face at the funeral, I felt as if the colors had vanished from the world. As I was leaving the funeral home, dizzy and haste, someone caught my eye. A small curled-up figure on the side of the parking lot. I had met him several times. He must have just entered elementary school. I had no idea how big he had become. The small figure that was frozen in time was my late best friend's son, Oliver. My chest tightened to see the way he sat there with his knee to his chin and stared blankly at the ground. I wondered what was going to happen to him who had lost his parents and was suddenly alone. Both of his late parents had no surviving family members, and they didn't have any close relatives. I was afraid that he would be sent around to one foster family after another. I couldn't bear the thought and offered to take him in at that point. As an outsider, I thought I might have caused a stir for saying such a thing. but it was granted relatively easily after agreeing not to ask for any help in any way. Oliver also agreed to live with me without hesitation. After that, things just fell into place, and I took in the huge responsibility to raise him alone. As expected, my life as I knew, it was gone. Every day was like a storm, and I realized how hard it was to care for a child. I grew a deep respect for all the parents in the world. My days were dazzling busy, but also joyful. Oliver and I fought from time to time, but I gave him the maximum amount of love I could. He grew up without any serious illness or injury. After nearly 10 years of living together, he had just started high school. We were out shopping for dinner when we bumped into Josh. He looked surprised to see Oliver standing next to me, but then he started speaking mockingly.
You, why do you have such a big son? Were you cheating on me?
Hey, don't make such a vile accusation. This is...
I knew it. He must be the child of your affair. Otherwise, you wouldn't have such a grown son.
Stop it. I never cheated on you, and only the two of us have been living together. Anyway, he is my... I tried to explain, but he interrupted me every time. He never listened to others when he believed something was wrong, but I thought he got worse than before. He gave me a creepy smirk while he spoke.
Oh my God, you were dumped by your cheating partner, weren't you? Poor you. I bet you must be having a hard time since you weren't really making money.
You idiot. You're so rude. Josh, perhaps amused that I was offended, continued to smirk at me. It was about to walk away from his insensitive guy when I noticed something odd. Why did he assume that I had a child with another man? He knew very well that I was on infertility treatment for 5 years, but never conceived. I asked him exactly what was on my mind. Why do you think he's my child? You know I'm infertile, don't you? So why do you think I had a child with another man?
I'm just guessing.
Even if I had cheated on you, you know I can't get pregnant. That's why we got divorced. Do you happen to forget such an important thing?
Yeah, that's right. How many years has it been since we divorced?
It was suspicious. He was staring at me condescendingly just a moment ago, but his eyes started to shift. My suspicion grew by the sudden change of his attitude. Is there something you're holding back from me?
I'm not hiding anything.
Really? I took a step toward him, and he took a step back. When I stared at his face, he made an awkward expression and started to explain. What he said was surprising. After we got divorced, one of his colleagues told him about male infertility. He was curious, so he got tested and found that he had abnormal sperm function. In other words, he was the cause of infertility. He had been reluctant to participate in the treatment with me, so we were unable to have a child. So, you mean I couldn't conceive because...
Yeah, it was my fault.
Oh my God.
You were mocking me for not being able to give you a child, weren't you? That's why you cheated on me and left me, wasn't it?
Excuse me? He was calm at first, but as he spoke, his voice grew louder and louder. His emotions seemed to be building up.
You knew I had a problem, weren't you? That's why you found someone else.
Wait a minute. Oliver is my late best friend's son. She died in an accident, so I took him in, and I've been raising him as my adopted son.
Shut up! Shut up! That's a lie. You've always been a flirt. You must be lured some guy. You useless bitch.
No matter how hard I tried to explain to him, he didn't listen to me. I was at a loss as to what to do. He was shouting at me at that point. His words became more and more abusive. People were glancing at us. I felt very uncomfortable. When I was about to speak, Oliver, who had been quietly watching our exchange next to me, spoke up. Please, stop insulting my mother. What the hell? If you continue being rude to her, I will call the police. Josh flinched as Oliver flashed his phone at him. After glaring at him resentfully, Josh said nothing, but just clicked his tongue and walked away. Thank you, sweetheart. If you ever need help, just call me. He seemed illogical, so it's not safe for you to talk to him alone. No, it's dangerous. Okay. I couldn't believe that my son had come to my rescue. I thought he was still a child, but I was unexpectedly moved by how much he had grown up. Several more years passed. Oliver was about to graduate from university, and it was time for him to look for a job. We had planned to dine out together after his job interview. He was running late, so I was waiting for him at our meeting point when Josh appeared in front of me. Yo, Grace. Josh? He still had a nasty smirk as before, but his clothes were tattered and his shoes had holes. The way he appeared was so disheveled that I wouldn't have recognized him unless he called out to me. As I stood there, unable to say anything from the shock, Josh staggered close to me. Hey, honey, why don't we get remarried and live together again? What? Yes, let's do that. Let's live together. Unable to grasp his incoherent demand, I just stood there like a statue. He was getting closer and closer. When his hand touched my shoulder, I jerked back and bumped into someone. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm okay. Are you alright? The older man looked at me with concern, as if he sensed something strange in the air. The man glanced at Josh and was about to say something. Hey, you! Stay away from my mother! Oliver, who had just arrived, stepped in between me and Josh. Ugh, good timing. I'm going to be your father, so you're going to have to support me, you understand? What the hell? What are you talking about? A child who was abandoned by his parents and didn't grow up feeling their love must be facing a hard life. Probably you can't even find a good job and will live like a loser. If you can't be happy living in poverty, you should at least be a good son and devote yourself to your father. You're making no sense. If it was only about me, I could put it up with it. But to make fun of him is abominable. My vision was distorted with rage. He knew nothing about us and had no right to speak about us. I clenched my fist in frustration. Oliver seemed to be indignant as well. Perhaps he was hurt to be taught unfairly during a sensitive time in his job search. He bit his lip in frustration. I had to protect him. When I glared at Josh with all the hate in the world, the man who had been quietly watching us spoke calmly. With all due respect, this young man has already been accepted by my company. You should have received a call today. Huh? What are you talking about, old man? You have nothing to do with us, so don't get involved. I actually do. I assumed I have more to do with him than you. Oh, I'm sorry. I have introduced myself. The man took out his business card. Josh was astounded when he read it and looked at the man's face and the card over and over again. When I looked at the card, the title, Chief Executive Officer, was written on it. The company name was the same as Oliver's first choice. Both he and I were too stunned to say anything. The man continued to speak in the same calm manner. I was friends with Oliver's late father before his death. We used to play golf together, and I used to visit his house. Oliver was very young, so I don't think he remembers me. I played with you too, Oliver. After your parents passed away, I heard that a friend of your late mother took you in. You've been raised by a wonderful person. I can see the shadow of your late father, not only in your appearance, but in your kind heart. He had a strong sense of justice too. The three of us intently listened to the man. He looked at Oliver compassionately and then moved his eyes upon Josh. His calm voice abruptly changed, and he started to speak sternly. Oliver has grown up to be a very fine man raised by her and his late parents. On the contrary, how about you? You curse others in such a blunt manner in a public place? Before you speak ill of him, you should reflect on yourself in the mirror. Shut up, old man! Don't get too comfortable with me just because I listened to your story. Turning red, Josh drew closer to the man. When he was about to grab the man's neck, his hands were stopped by other hands. Hey, calm down. Come with us. Let's talk over there. Surprised by the sudden appearance of the police, I glanced at Oliver, who was holding out his phone. I wondered when he had called them. I was being protective while I was trying to protect him. It wasn't the right time to be emotional, but I was moved by Oliver's maturity. He was not a little child to be protected anymore. Mom, are you okay? I looked at him with a strange feeling of happiness and sadness. He stared back at me curiously. I'm fine, thank you. His stiffened expression relaxed as he was relieved. After that, Josh was out of control for a little while, but the police took him down. He was taken away with his head hung down as if he had given up. I have not seen him since then. I heard through the rumor that he remarried a such younger colleague after divorcing me, but they were unable to have a child. His wife was very insistent, and he reluctantly told her about his infertility. She wanted a child so badly that she was outraged by him for not telling her earlier, and they divorced. In addition, all the complaints she made to her colleagues started circulating at work, and he was too ashamed to keep working there. He resigned from his job, but he was having a hard time finding new employment. He had to make do with a part-time job to survive. It was during that time he happened to run into me again, and that was how the whole thing came to be. I don't know where he is and what he is doing now, but I sure hope he'll never appear in front of Oliver and me again. I have consulted with the police and have taken countermeasures just in case. Oliver got his own place after he landed on the job. We're still close and talk on phone every day. He's having a hard time getting used to his unfamiliar life, but he's determined to stand on his own feet. As for me, I fell in love at first sight with the CEO, who helped me at that time. I invited him to dinner as a way of thanking him, and we had an unexpectedly good time. Since we were both single, we've been meeting for lunch or dinner since then. Oliver is amazed by my excitement at being in love for the first time in a long while. He listens to me and gives me advice. He is a really good son. When Josh and I divorced, I had no idea such a life was awaiting me. You never know what life has in store for you.
My husband left our daughter suffering in pain. 5 days later, he called me when I was at her funeral.
To call an ambulance for a mere headache and vomiting is overreacting. If you are so worried, why don't you just come home and take care of her? I mean, isn't that your job? Don't rely on me. I don't have time for this. I'm leaving now. You have to take care of the rest of yourself. While my daughter cried and crouched in pain, my husband left the house. She had always been healthy and never had any serious illnesses. How was it an overreaction when such a daughter was suffering? It was clear that he was not concerned about her at all. I was out working at the time, but fearing for her life. I immediately returned home and called an ambulance myself. If I had been there for her from the beginning, she didn't need to suffer so much. As I held her hand, I cried from frustration and blamed myself. 5 days later, when my husband finally called me, I quietly told him, "I'm in the middle of our daughter's funeral. I'm Stacy, 45 years old. I work part-time and do my best to take care of the house and raise my daughter. I met my husband through a matchmaker. When I was single, I had a full-time job in a field that was dominated by females. It was difficult for me to meet someone at or through work. I had always had a strong desire to get married and didn't want to wait until I was older. I decided to go to a matchmaking service and was introduced to my husband, Wayne. He was a meticulous person who did things very carefully. On the other hand, I was more laid back, so at first I thought we were two opposites and incompatible. As we got to know more about each other, we came to respect our differences. We were so in love that it was hard to believe we met through a matchmaker. I was grateful for my luck fate. When we got married, Wayne only wore the ring during the ring exchange as he was allergic to it. We enjoyed our honeymoon period to the fullest, and then we conceived 2 years after our marriage. A healthy baby was born, and we were overjoyed.
You did great, honey. We have a very pretty baby girl.
Thanks, hon. She's adorable. Let's do our best to raise her with lots of love. He was totally head over heels for our daughter, Mia, even more than I was. He even used her birth weight for the license plate number and passwords. Seeing him like that filled me with the warmth of love, and I believe we will continue to live happily ever after. As the months passed and around the time Mia entered high school, Wayne suddenly started working overtime a lot.
I'm in charge of a new project now. I'll be home late today, so don't wait for me. In the worst case, I have to stay overnight at the office.
I understand. It's really tough every day, isn't it? I'm grateful that you're working hard, but don't overdo it. I'm sure it's okay if you come home early once in a while. Love you. I was proud of him for climbing the ladder at work. However, he seems to be overworked to the point of locking himself in the study on his days off. I understood that he was exhausted and needed some time alone. There were hardly any interactions with his family, which created a gloomy atmosphere in the house. Mia had always been a daddy's girl since she was little. Dad's been locked in his study a lot lately. I understand that he's busy, but I want to hang out with him like we used to. She lamented with me. I knew I had to do something for her and suggested to Wayne, "Hey, honey, why don't we go out for dinner this coming weekend for the first time in a while?" I was taken aback by his unexpected response.
You gonna be kidding, right? You know I'm exhausted. Is this harassment? Why can't you just let me relax on my day off?
He suddenly lashed out at me. You don't have to get mad at me. It's not good for you to stay cooped up in your room all day long. Going out is a good way to refresh yourself after a hard day's work, isn't it? I tried to calm him down.
Leave me alone. You guys go ahead and do what you want.
He was adamant in his refusal. Since then, He began to pick on me out of his frustration and sarcastically commented, "I so envy your freedom." I spent more time with Mia, but she was hurt by not getting attention from her father and locked herself in her room. I felt that my family was on the verge of collapse and hoped that once this project was finished, our normal, cheerful life will return. 1 month had passed since then. I'm going on a training trip with my team for 5 days starting tomorrow. I was surprised at the suddenness of the news, and at the same time, I asked him what bothered me. "Oh, that's so sudden. Besides, it's already been a month since you were assigned to your new project. Are you still doing the training?" I questioned the duration. "Nothing odd about the prolonged training. Keep your nose out of my business." He kicked me to the curb. I was frustrated with his grumpiness and wondered when he would be able to spend time with the three of us. The next day, he was getting ready to leave for the trip. He was still at home when I left the house for work. My daughter was off school for a substitute holiday. I thought they could spend a little time together before he left. I was hoping that they could talk about some of the things that had piled up. Right after I arrived at work, I received an unexpected text from Mia. "Mom, my head hurts so bad. I feel like it's going to crack. I feel nauseous too. I can't take it anymore." She seemed to be fine when I left home, but she suddenly felt ill. I called her in a hurry, but she wasn't picking up the phone. I called Wayne for help. "Are you still at home? Mia sounds like she's in a lot of pain. Can you call an ambulance right away?" I had lost my grandmother to a subarachnoid hemorrhage, so I was very concerned that she was suffering from the similar symptoms. "It's just a headache and vomiting. Don't you think you're overreacting? If you're so worried, why don't you come back and take care of her? I'm leaving soon, so you take care of the rest." His reaction was unbelievable. Despite his daughter's distress, he was about to leave for a trip. "Wait, what the hell? How could you not help your own daughter when she is in such trouble? Is your job that important to you?" I lashed out at him in a harsher tone than usual. "I'm telling you, you're just making a big deal. It's raining today. She must be feeling the pressure. Anyway, if you came back, the problem would be solved. Time management is a basic rule for my job. I can't be late for something like this." He threw all the responsibility on me and put his work first. I felt no affection for Mia from him, who used to care so much about her. I hung up the phone and made my way home, praying. He had already gone, and I found Mia unconscious in the living room. The ambulance came right away and rushed her to the hospital. I called Wayne after the doctor explained to me her symptoms. He must have been busy and didn't pick up my calls. If I had been there for her, she didn't need to suffer so much. I shed tears and regretted my helplessness. 5 days later, I finally received a call from Wayne in the evening. The first thing that came out of his mouth was, "You don't have to prepare my dinner tonight." I was stunned for a moment. I had been wondering how he could come home after leaving Mia in that condition. He didn't even call to find out how she was in those 5 days, and it sounded as if nothing had ever happened. I cut to the chase and told him, "I'm in the middle of our daughter's funeral right now. I can't prepare dinner anyway. Your trip is over, right? Can you come over now?" As a father, it was expected of him to attend his daughter's funeral. To my surprise, he kept indifferent. "Oh, I see. Well, I won't be able to make it. You can deal with it yourself." He showed no sorrow whatsoever. I reached the boiling point and my anger exploded. I resolved to tell him everything that was on my mind when he got back home. He returned late at night. Why didn't you call an ambulance right away? Do you have any idea how much you suffered? I had been waiting for this moment and immediately started attacking him. Oh, come on. I haven't been home in a while and you don't even welcome me back. Even if I called an ambulance that day, it doesn't mean she survived, right? What's done is done. I brought you some sweets. Make yourself feel better. I was stunned by no sign of remorse from him and lost all energy to argue. He seemed to take advantage of it. Give me all the insurance money. I'm the one who has been paying for everything in regard to our daughter. You're just a part-timer with a low income, so you have no right to it. He grinned at me. How can you say such a thing right after losing our precious daughter? It's not all about work. Why don't you think about your family a little? His inhuman arrogance infuriated me. He was not intimidated by me, though. It's your responsibility to take care of daughter's health. It's your fault for not fulfilling your duty. It's a false accusation to say that she died because of me. He snapped back at me. I knew that arguing with him would get me nowhere. I produced an image that caused tremendous stress for Mia. You hurt her and put her under stress to the point of destroying her health. Don't tell me you know nothing about this. I showed it to him on Mia's phone. It was a picture of him shopping with a young woman, arm in arm like a couple. On the day he left for the trip, Mia took the opportunity of being alone with him. She showed him the image she had taken and asked him about the affair. She also recorded the conversation. He flipped out knowing it would be the huge problem if I found out. How dare you! If you tell your mother about this, I'll make sure you will regret it. He threatened her. She told me all of this despite suffering in the hospital bed. That's been having an affair with a young woman behind our back. It was so unbelievable, and the shock and the stress were too much. I started getting headaches and nausea. He used to love me and cared for me, but I can't take it anymore. Mom, please, will you leave him? I demanded a divorce in response to Mia's request. Wayne looked at me, unfazed, saying it wasn't enough to prove his affair. Then, how about these? I threw printouts of the correspondence between him and his adulteress as conclusive evidence. You can't be serious. You got into my computer without my permission. I never told you my password. His expression changed drastically, and he was agitated. I took a liberty. You used Mia's birth weight as your card plate and pin, didn't you? I thought you might have done the same with your password. Sure enough, I was right. When I looked at his emails and the messaging app on the computer, I found more than enough evidence. He lied to me and Mia that he was busy at work, but in truth, he had been almost cohabiting with the adulteress. The training trip he said he was going on with his team was just a trip with his adulteress using his paid leave. It's an invasion of privacy to go into someone's computer without their permission. He put up a desperate fight, but I relentlessly pursued him. It's wrong to keep things hidden from your family, don't you think? Oh, by the way, I also found a record of you unlawfully obtaining company money to pay off your girlfriend. You can't get away with it now, can you? Admit it now. He fell to his knees in a panic as all his wrongdoings were exposed. I told him I was returning to my parents' house and left the house. A few days later, we filed for divorce. I was to have custody of Mia. I moved her to my parents' house while Wayne was away and focused on getting evidence of his infidelity at home. Before he returned from his trip, I had completed the moving process as well. By the way, I lied to him about Mia's funeral. I wanted to see him weigh between Mia and his affair. He thought that if she was gone, the affair would not be exposed, and he could secretly pay back the company with the insurance money. I realized what a scumbag he was, and I still shudder to think until this day. I gave evidence of him swindling company money to his HR, which led to his disciplinary dismissal. He was asked to refund the exact amount he had spent. He lamented that the amount was so inflated and that there was no way for him to pay in one lump sum. He was such a meticulous man that he had carefully written down the address and phone number of his adulteress on his computer. I contacted her and exposed the whole thing. It's normally a good thing to be meticulous, but in his case, it completely backfired on him. Thus, he's been dumped by his adulteress, and even his parents cut ties with him. He's been living lonely and working hard to pay the alimony, child support, and refunds to his ex-company. I've been told that he was so anxious about stealing money from work, so he was taking his stress out on me.
I'm really sorry. I only gave in to stupid temptation.
He apologized and tried to get me back with him. It's way too late, and I refused to forgive him. After being subjected to immense stress every day, Mia, who used to be a daddy's girl, says, "I never want to see him again." She's been receiving the support of my parents and me, and positive advice from a friend in a similar situation. She's getting her normal self back. "Are you sure you're happy that we got divorced as you wanted?" "Of course. A father I don't care about is nothing but a nuisance. I'm very happy to realize how deeply you cared about me. Thank you for being there for me, Mom. I love you." "Thank you too, for being my daughter. I love you so much." We held each other tightly in tears, realizing once again the importance of each other. We're taking the first step toward a brighter future together.
My husband got into an accident while he was cheating on me. He asked me to take care of him, but I refused him.
My name is Sadie, and I am 28 years old, and I am a housewife. I have been working for the company where I have been working all my life, but I quit the company once I found out that I got pregnant. But the year our daughter Nicole was born, my husband, Kevin, said that he was going to work as a freelancer and left the company where he has been working at. I asked him repeatedly if he had any proper income by doing the work as a freelancer. But every time I asked him, he kept on assuring me by saying,
"Oh, don't worry. Working as a freelance is much better than being an unrewarding company employee."
And with that, he began working from home. At first, it seems that my husband's work was going well, as he was receiving jobs from multiple clients. But gradually, the amount of work orders which he would receive got really unstable. I felt that it was mentally tough to have a child while depending everything on my husband's unstable income alone. So, when our daughter turned 2 years old, I asked the company I had left to allow me to return to work as at least a part-time worker so that I can work shorter hours. And since I began my part-time job at the company, we have managed to make a stable living as a family. So, while I was at work, my husband would be the one to take care of our daughter. I was a little worried because my husband is a bit of a sloppy person who would quit his job all of a sudden. But when our daughter started kindergarten, he suggested and insisted that he would drop her off and pick her up as well from the kindergarten. Well, there is no rule that the wife should necessarily always be the one to always do the house chores, take care of the house, or take care of the child. So, like this, I convinced myself that there are many married couples with this style of marriage nowadays. But then, something feels a little off with my husband lately. I don't really know the reason why, but I have a gut feeling that there is something strange going on with my husband. My husband is always clutching onto his phone very close to him and staring at the phone screen with a huge grin on his face. And he even takes his phone into the toilet, or takes his phone while he's taking a shower or taking a bath. And now recently, he has been going out more and more compared to before. There was this one incident where my husband even went out during the day while leaving our daughter behind. And when our daughter tried to pick up something which was on a shelf, she climbed up on the chair, fell down, and broke her arm. To what had happened, I said to my husband, "Why didn't you take care and look after Nicole properly? I can't believe that you would even go out and leave Nicole all by herself." And to this, my husband said,
What? I can't even have my own time to relax by myself? What are you talking about when you put all the responsibility of raising our daughter only on me?
And he got really angry at me.
You're such a pain in the ass. Women like you make me so pissed off.
Kevin would say all these kind of things just to defend himself. And to me, everything he said was completely unbelievable. It feels like my husband has completely changed his mind to another woman and does not care about me or our daughter at all. I was so shocked and stunned at the situation that I felt as if there was a huge hole in my heart, which was being filled with anger and sadness. Since that incident, my husband has been staying out frequently, not even coming back home for the night without any hesitation, saying that he had to go out to collect data for his work. The last time Kevin came back home while he stayed overnight somewhere, which he won't even tell me where he stayed the night, he clearly had a hickey on his neck, and it was so visible that it felt like as if he was trying to show it off. Seeing this, I was completely sure about what Kevin has been doing. I don't need a guy like him, and I just really want to divorce him as soon as possible. If Kevin keeps on treating me like that, he probably thinks of me as just his ATM, where he can just get money off from. When I thought like that, I was just so frustrated and disappointed that Kevin had thought of me that way. I wanted to get away from him in a way that was advantageous to me, and that would make my life stable after our divorce. So, I tried to find out more about my husband and his affair. But he was very thorough about hiding what he has been doing and what he had done, and did not leave any kind of evidence back at home. The other day, while my husband was sleeping, I secretly took his finger and opened the fingerprint authentication on his phone and looked at his phone to check his messages. But to my surprise, the conversation with the woman who seemed to be having an affair with him was nowhere to be found, as he seems to delete the chat and the data every day before going to bed. What should I do? While I was being troubled with no chance to get proof of my husband's affair, at an unexpected moment, I finally learned the whole truth about his affair. One day, suddenly, in the middle of the night, my phone rang. And that call was from the police. I had asked the police what had happened, and after hearing the police's story, it seemed that my husband had been in a car accident. My husband had rented a car, and he was the one who had caused the car accident. And not only my husband, but also a woman who was a passenger in the car was seriously injured and taken to the hospital. And that woman, I'm sure, was whom Kevin was having an affair with. On the day Kevin had left, he said that he was on a business trip for an interview for his job. But the truth was that Kevin was actually on a trip with the woman who he was cheating on me with. I almost went hysterical with anger, but I managed to calm myself down. Called my parents, asked them to take care of our daughter, and hurried to the hospital where Kevin and his mistress was. The receptionist at the hospital told me that neither Kevin nor the woman were both in life-threatening condition, which was a relief. But according to the doctor who was in charge of Kevin and the mistress, had told me that there was a possibility that my husband would not be able to walk and use his legs permanently due to the impact of the accident. And even if he recovered from his injuries, he would probably have to live his life in a wheelchair. I also asked about the condition of the woman who was in the car with Kevin. The doctor did not give me any details, but she said that the window of the car was broken and that a piece of the window glass had pierced her face, which left a huge scar on her face. The doctor also said that the woman had a neck injury from the impact of the collision, and that she was currently lying on the bed with her neck immobilized. I felt a little bit sorry for Kevin's mistress because she is a woman who now has a huge scar on her face. But at the same time, I felt in my heart that that is what she deserves, since she got karma. When I entered the hospital room, which was a two-person room, I saw Kevin and the woman who appeared to be his mistress sleeping on the bed, side by side. The nurse said that normally men and women would have separate rooms. But this was the only room available for now, which is why they were both put in the same room, because they were riding in the same car. I stood in front of the woman and looked at her face. Oh, I think I have seen her somewhere before, maybe. Then, as I thought to myself, I had realized that this woman is our daughter's kindergarten teacher. So, in other words, my husband was having an affair with a kindergarten teacher. No wonder my husband insisted at that time that he would be the one to take our daughter to and from kindergarten every day, which was pretty unusual of him to even suggest. And now that I think about it, Kevin had also insisted on going to parent-teacher conferences. And so like this, everything made all sense to me now. My husband seemed to wake up and noticed that I was there and said, "Oh," in a quiet voice. "I knew that you were cheating on me, but I didn't really realize that you were cheating on me with our daughter's kindergarten teacher."
Oh, no. This is... Well, she is really beautiful and very nice, so I guess I couldn't really help it, you know.
My husband looked really weak as he said this, which was unlike his usual attitude and tone, probably because the doctor had already informed him that he had to live his life in a wheelchair from now on. I can't keep on going on doing this with you anymore. Let's just get a divorce.
Hey, no, wait a minute. I only just lost myself for a moment, you know? And I won't do this ever again.
No, I'm sorry, but this is not acceptable. You'd say that you wouldn't do it again, but doing it even once is just completely unacceptable.
No way! You heard everything from my doctor, didn't you? That I'm going to be in a wheelchair my whole life from now on.
Yes, so?
What do you mean, so? What the hell are you talking about? You should at least take care of me.
And why should I even do that for you? Why should I, who got cheated on by you with another woman behind my back, have to take care of you?
That's because I'm the one who's been providing for you and our daughter this whole time.
Excuse me? It's because I began to do my part-time job, we're able to make ends meet, and live decently like we have been all this time. Kevin, we can't depend on your income alone because it was too unstable. Have you even forgotten the times when you were only earning $1,000 or $500 a month?
Well, that's...
Anyway, I have definitely set my mind on getting a divorce from you. I'll even request for alimony from you.
Oh, you must be crazy. You're just the worst human being ever.
And who do you think is the worst human being? You were the one who left our daughter behind all alone by herself so that you could have an affair with that woman. The mistress, who was beside Kevin, was crying out in pain when she was first brought in, and since she was giving a very strong anesthetic, she's now sleeping deeply even when Kevin and I were arguing loudly. Anyways, let's just communicate through our lawyers about what and how we are going to proceed about this. With saying that, I left the hospital room. Well, I am definitely going to be busy from now on. First comes divorce, then I'll have to also request for alimony and the child support. I have to make sure I get everything on what I was entitled to. I also went back home to my parents' place and explained to my parents about what had happened. They were both very angry with what had happened and said, "I'll take care of our grandchild and you can also come back here now, Sadie." And the next day, I went to the kindergarten to turn in all the documents for my daughter Nicole, as she will no longer go to that kindergarten anymore. When I got there was a bit of a commotion in the kindergarten because that teacher, who was Kevin's mistress, had not arrived yet. No one would know that she was in the hospital and even sleeping in the same room as my husband. I looked at the commotion as I finished handing in the necessary documents and finished the paperwork, and I was just about to leave the kindergarten. Then, that was when Tammy, a mother to a really good friend of Nicole, came up and began talking to me. "Oh, how rare of you to be here. Your husband is the one who comes here all the time." So, I explained that my husband had been in a car accident. Then to that, Tammy said, "Oh, really? Well, I'll go visit Kevin at the hospital the next time with my husband." Using this as a great opportunity, I told her that the person who was also in the same car with Kevin was also being hospitalized in the same room. And I also told Tammy to go visit them as soon as possible, as I knew that they would be happy to see her. And so, it seems like Tammy had visited Kevin and his mistress that Saturday. At that time, Kevin and his mistress were still in the same room. Which is why soon after Tammy visited the hospital, I got a call from her right away. I acted like I was crying over the phone and told Tammy that my husband was actually having an affair with the kindergarten teacher. You know, Kevin had even lied to me about going on a business trip, but actually, he had gone on a road trip together with that kindergarten teacher behind my back. And even the other day, Kevin had left our daughter Nicole at home all alone so that Kevin and that teacher could meet up with each other. So that's why I decided to get a divorce with Kevin, move back home to my parents, and move my daughter to a different kindergarten. Since Tammy has a strong sense of justice, she was outraged about what had happened and said, "That's totally unacceptable." And after that, it seems like the story quickly became known throughout the whole kindergarten. So as a result, the teacher, who was Kevin's mistress, had to quit the kindergarten. And that teacher is now suing Kevin for causing the accident, which left her face scarred for life. Then, Kevin called me once saying,
Please help me.
But, of course, I ignored him by saying, "That's none of my business anymore." I also told Kevin that the only thing I would talk to him about is the divorce and alimony and child support, and hung up the phone on him. For a while after that, Kevin was reluctant to divorce me, but his lawyer finally persuaded him into it, and he finally signed the divorce papers. After that, I took what I could get for the alimony and child support, and Kevin also agreed to the promise where he would never see my daughter at all in the future. My lawyer told me that Kevin had been whining and crying the whole time, begging my lawyer to tell me that Kevin would never do this again and that he wanted me back as his wife. If Kevin needed me like that, then he should have taken care of me properly from the beginning, and not do anything stupid and disgusting like cheating on me with another woman behind my back. I apologized to my lawyer saying, "I am truly sorry for the trouble I have caused you." Anywho, I received $30,000 from my ex-husband and $20,000 from Kevin's mistress as alimony. As for Kevin's mistress, it seems that she was very confident about how she looked, and because of that, she had no confidence anymore because of that huge, hideous scar which is now on her face, and she's no longer able to go outside that freely compared to before. Now, it seems like Kevin's mistress is back at her own parents' house, and she supposedly shut herself into her room most of the time. And as for my ex-husband, since he was hospitalized and was unable to work for a while, most of his clients are gone, and now he does not have any jobs as a freelancer anymore. Actually, it seems like Kevin was forced to pay a penalty fee because he was unable to work on some of the projects due to the accident and missed the deadline for the contract. And currently, my ex-husband is penniless and is now living at home in a wheelchair with his parents taking care of him. Being in such a situation like that and being a man who got divorced because of his own affair and what he had done, it is probably very difficult for Kevin now to be in a new relationship. This is what Kevin and his mistress deserves for what they did. And on the other hand, I was able to work with shortened hours to full-time, and then back to being a full-time employee again a year later in the company I have always been working at. And now I make enough money to even support my daughter all on my own. I will continue to work hard while watching my wonderful daughter grow up. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video. My name is Marla. I am 23 years old and I work as a childcare worker. I married my husband Kenneth right after I graduated from college, earlier than others around me. Kenneth is 24 years old, 1 year older than me. I had a crush on Kenneth, whom I met in my social circle, and then I made a passionate pursuit. Kenneth also responded to my advances, and during our university days, we went on various dates and had a lot of fun together. We had promised to get married after graduating from university, so I had already introduced myself to my future in-laws during our student days. However, since the early stages of our relationship, I often visited my future in-laws' house, so reporting our intention to marry was more of a formality. Still, my in-laws were very pleased and accepted me as part of the family. After graduating from college, I got married without any issues. However, what followed became a source of trouble. Kenneth graduated a year earlier and was working diligently as a working professional. I joined a major company, so my salary was decent, but considering expenses, it was quite moderate. I didn't plan to quit my job as I wanted to experience my dream job as a childcare worker. Despite the various challenges in the childcare profession, I enjoyed being healed by the children. I intended to continue working as a childcare worker until I had children with Kenneth. However, balancing work and household chores turned out to be more challenging than I imagined. Waking up early to do laundry, preparing breakfast and lunch for both of us, and returning home to vacuum, clean, and bathe were all demanding tasks. Kenneth, who had lived alone during college, cooperated with most household chores, but he couldn't cook. Therefore, cooking became my responsibility. Balancing household chores in my first year of work proved challenging for my clumsy self. Kenneth, a generally easygoing person who doesn't complain much, had only one recurring complaint from me.
Again? Seasoned carrots? Didn't we have that the other day?
Watching the dinner I made, Kenneth sighed as usual. His reaction to my cooking bothered me. Kenneth's mother is an incredibly skilled cook who even runs a cooking class. Her repertoire of recipes is incredibly vast. Kenneth never had the same dish for a month while living under his mother's culinary expertise. Kenneth, who grew up in such a home, has a discerning palate, and I was told that when he lived alone he mostly ate out or had boxed lunches because the food he cooked himself was not good enough. It's understandable that he can't cook, but having to endure complaints every day like this was tough. Sorry, but wasn't it quite some time ago I made seasoned carrots?
I think it was about 2 weeks ago, but your repertoire of dishes doesn't seem extensive, right? Besides, my packed lunches are increasingly filled with frozen foods.
Kenneth is not one to complain about housework, but he is particular about cooking, and he often finds something to criticize about my meals. In the end, he would eat it while saying, "Well, I chose it," but it never seemed satisfactory, and that was quite stressful. Living in an unfamiliar working life and facing daily criticism for the dishes I worked hard to prepare was tough. I also made efforts to overcome this situation, buying cooking books and trying new recipes, but none of them pleased Kenneth. I decided to wake up early and sleep early to prepare a variety of dishes for lunch, but each comment about the lunch's color being off or questions about the use of frozen items took a toll on my spirit. It is said that in the first year of a childcare worker's career, it is easy to get sick from children. I was no exception to this rule and often caught colds. On days when I felt unwell, I wished Kenneth, my partner, could prepare meals for me. However, he insisted,
even when my mom wasn't feeling well, she still cooked,
and requested that I handle meal preparation. Feverish and with a head spinning, I attached a cold compress and worked hard on preparing the meal. Kenneth, though not explicitly critical, showed it subtly. I enjoyed cooking when I lived alone. The process of making my favorite dishes with my own hands was enjoyable. However, after marrying Kenneth, cooking became nothing but a burden. Will he complain again? With this, he might criticize the color. As I cooked, I found myself thinking only about Kenneth's complaints. I might not be as good at cooking as Mom, but it's disheartening to hear that. I've told Kenneth about it too. Kenneth seemed surprised and apologized at that time, but he still had concerns about my cooking. He would eat with a reluctant expression or couldn't endure it and would complain. I began to strongly believe that I was a bad cook, and no matter how much effort I put into my cooking, all I could think was, I bet it tastes bad. Food is an important part of life. Life is brightened simply by the pleasure of eating. Every time Kenneth complained about the food, the word divorce loomed in my mind. I felt like I was darkening Kenneth's life with my poor cooking skills. One day I began to wonder if Kenneth would be better off with a wife who was a better cook. It just so happened that Kenneth and I were going back to my parents-in-law's house for a long vacation. We were good friends, except when we ate, but I was even beginning to think in my mind that this trip home might be my last. When we arrived at my parents-in-law's house, they greeted us warmly. We arrived at my parents-in-law's house a little after noon, and after chatting for a while, my mother-in-law excused herself and said, I'd better get ready for dinner. To be honest, I was depressed just standing in the kitchen these days, but I couldn't leave it to Hope alone, so I got up and said, I'll help you. My mother-in-law hesitated, but when I expressed a bit of discouragement, saying, I'd like you to teach me how to cook, she warmly accepted with a smile, saying, Then let's do it together. With her cooking class experience, my mother-in-law's culinary skills were truly impressive. She swiftly cut ingredients, smoothly handled the cooking process, and I couldn't match her expertise. As I needed the meat for making hamburgers, she smiled and struck up a conversation. Marla, do you dislike cooking? No, it's not that, but I lack confidence. Why? You're doing well. I was impressed with your skill in finely chopping onions. Getting praised for my cooking was rare. I held back tears as my heart warmed. I cook every day, but I'm not good at it. I always feel like I'm causing trouble for Kenneth. I wish I could be like you. My mother-in-law chuckled at my self-deprecating words. It's okay. The more you cook, Marla, the more you'll become skilled, just like me. You're doing great, Marla. Thank you very much. My mother-in-law's words felt like they were slowly seeping into my parched heart. My mother-in-law looked puzzled as I involuntarily choked up, but when I mentioned that onions had a stinging effect, she chuckled and said, Oh, that happens to everyone, with a smile. I couldn't possibly say to such a kind mother-in-law, I'm struggling with daily criticism about cooking from your son. And now, as the cooking concluded, dinner time arrived. Prompted by my mother-in-law, Kenneth and my father-in-law joined the dining table. When Kenneth exclaimed, Oh, upon seeing the hamburgers, I unconsciously braced myself to endure any negative comments.
Is this your hamburgers, Mom?
No, Marla made it for you.
Marla, huh?
Kenneth expressed clear disappointment, and I couldn't say anything. I had tightly gripped the fork in my hand.
Well, it's not that Marla is bad at cooking, but she makes similar things every day. The other day she made seasoned carrots, and now, 2 weeks later, she made it again. Mom, you never made the same dishes within a month. Marla might benefit from attending Mom's cooking class or absorbing it from you.
Kenneth, having had a few drinks with his father and being back home after a while, seemed relaxed. I did not know how to respond to Kenneth, who laughed and made snide remarks about me. If I didn't smile convincingly, the atmosphere would turn awkward. It was at that moment when I tried to force a cheerful conversation. Suddenly, my mother-in-law stood up and slapped Kenneth's cheek. The sound, a sharp whoosh, surprised me, but even more shocking was seeing my mother-in-law in tears. Kenneth is stunned with his hand on his smacked cheek. In the silence that followed, my mother-in-law uttered in a sorrowful voice, If you're going to grow up to be like that, I shouldn't have bothered with my cooking. Don't you understand the difficulty of working and cooking in the kitchen at the same time, Kenneth? Marla did not seem to enjoy the cooking at all. I was wondering why, but it turns out it's your fault. That's what you told Marla every day, right?
If you don't understand that you should be thankful to have someone cook for you, then don't ask Marla to cook for you anymore.
Huh?
Kenneth, who raised a small voice, looks at his mother and me with a bewildered expression. My father-in-law, who was standing quietly next to me, said,
Apologize.
and his voice was indeed filled with anger.
I'm sorry.
Not understanding what was happening, Kenneth apologizes to my mother-in-law. My father-in-law sighed and took a bite of his hamburger and put down his fork.
Marla, this hamburger is really delicious. Thank you for always cooking for that foolish son of ours. It seems we didn't notice Kenneth's immaturity. He's not yet fit to be someone's husband.
Huh?
Marla, I'm truly sorry. You must have experienced many unpleasant things. It's my responsibility for not teaching Kenneth how to cook.
Caught in a deeper layer of emotions from my in-laws, I was unsettled. But Kenneth seemed even more shaken. My mother-in-law snapped at Kenneth, who was looking back and forth between his mom and dad with a puzzled look on his face.
Starting today, you'll be cooking with me. Don't run away until you understand Marla's value.
Throughout the meal, Kenneth was scolded by his parents. Cooking is something that requires attention, especially when it comes to health, and it can be a significant burden. Deciding what to cook every day can be mentally taxing. Being blamed for it can be very painful. It seemed like my parents-in-law were conveying everything I wanted to say, but couldn't to Kenneth. After that, Kenneth and I awkwardly slept in the same room. When we turned off the lights to sleep, Kenneth asked me in a small voice,
Did it hurt when I said something about your cooking, Marla?
It was tough. I even considered divorce.
Divorce?
Kenneth sat up in surprise, but I curled up in the bed. Meals are a daily thing, so being criticized by you every day was tough. I felt sad, thinking that you might not want a wife who's bad at cooking like me. When I expressed my honest feelings, Kenneth finally seemed to understand and apologized, saying,
I'm sorry.
He finally seemed to understand and apologized truly.
I'm really sorry, Marla. It's embarrassing to realize it after being told by my parents at this age. But I was wrong. Because I want to be with you forever, I'll change from now on.
Yeah, thanks. My voice, saying that, was trembling as I held back tears. The next morning, Kenneth was woken up by his mother to teach him how to cook. Although my mother-in-law is a kind person, her coaching in the makeshift kitchen was strict, and Kenneth received plenty of criticism. The first tomato soup that Kenneth finally made was surprisingly strong in taste, but I was happy that he made it for me and said, thank you. Kenneth ended up preparing all the meals, including lunch and dinner, during the stay at my in-laws' place, under my mother-in-law's guidance. Even though the table was filled with awkward-looking dishes, I was still happy. When getting into the car to leave, Kenneth was sternly reminded by my in-laws.
reflect on yourself when you go home.
And he replied,
I understand.
before thanking them and driving away. Kenneth, your cooking was delicious. Thank you.
I had never cooked before, and I never thought it would be so challenging. I'm really sorry for saying all kinds of terrible things about you without knowing how hard you were trying. From now on, I'll also have some extra cooking skills.
Kenneth kept his promise and made lunch boxes the next day. In the gaps, it seemed Kenneth had added frozen side dishes. When I playfully said, "Frozen food?" he apologized, saying,
Sorry, even frozen food should be enough.
and sheepishly scratched his cheek. Since then, Kenneth and I have been in the kitchen together more often. I guess I was more experienced than Kenneth when it came to cooking, because while I taught him many things, he would also look at recipe books and suggest things like,
Let's try making this next time.
and I began to enjoy cooking. I laughed when Kenneth said,
Cooking starts when you go shopping for ingredients.
the lesson from my in-laws seemed to have a significant impact on Kenneth. Since Kenneth and I started enjoying cooking together, we haven't had any arguments, and our discussions about cooking have increased.
How is Kenneth these days?
My mother-in-law was very happy when I told her what was going on. And now I am pregnant. It is hard to work while dealing with my changing body. So Kenneth does most of the housework for me now. Kenneth's cooking is delicious, and we always share laughs saying, "It's delicious" during meals. I sincerely feel relieved that the cooking issue has been resolved before the arrival of our child. We were able to create a home where we could convey the joy of meals to the baby in my belly, thanks to my in-laws. This time, we are looking forward to treating our in-laws to dishes prepared by us as a couple.